Picture this, a quiet midnight in suburbia, where the only sound is the gentle hum of crickets and distant traffic. Then comes the knock. Not just any knock, 3 sharp, urgent raps that shatter the silence and change everything. The kind of knock that makes your heart skip a beat. Because deep down, you know nothing good comes calling at midnight. Today's story is about that knock, and how it exposed a web of lies so intricate, it left an entire community questioning who they could trust. It's about the darkness that can lurk behind the most familiar faces, and the secrets we keep from those closest to us. Welcome to the Real Crime Diary, where we uncover the stories that make us question everything we think we know about trust, loyalty, and human nature. And if you're as fascinated by the psychology behind these cases as I am, you'll want to visit therealcrimediary.com, where we dive even deeper into each story with exclusive content and insights you won't find anywhere else. Maple Grove was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and their keys in the ignition. A town of just over 5,000 souls, nestled in the rolling hills of western Pennsylvania, where the church bells still rang every Sunday morning and everyone showed up for the high school football games on Friday nights. The local diner, Mary's Place, served as the unofficial town hall, where coffee was always fresh and gossip even fresher. Sarah Miller had worked there for 23 years, knowing exactly how each regular liked their eggs and what news they'd want to hear about first. The maple trees that lined Main Street had been there longer than anyone could remember, their branches creating perfect archways that turned golden every fall. This was a place where 3 generations of families lived within walking distance of each other, where neighbors borrowed cups of sugar without hesitation, and where everyone pitched in when someone fell on hard times. The annual Harvest Festival still drew crowds from 3 counties over, and the town's claim to fame was having the longest-running continuous 4th of July parade in the state. But like many small towns where everyone knows everyone else's business, Maple Grove had its share of whispered conversations and meaningful glances. Behind the perfectly maintained lawns and weekly potluck dinners, people kept their real secrets close. As Sheriff Dan Thompson would later say, sometimes the better you know people, the easier it is for them to hide things in plain sight. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came in the form of a handwritten note, discovered by Sarah during her morning shift at Mary's Place. Folded neatly and tucked beneath the sugar dispenser at table 7, the message was simple, yet haunting. I know what you did last summer. The truth won't stay buried forever. At first, Sarah thought it was a teenager's prank, maybe inspired by those old horror movies. But there was something about the handwriting, precise, deliberate, almost familiar, that made her hands shake as she read it. When she showed it to Sheriff Thompson, his usual easygoing demeanor shifted to something more guarded. The following week brought more notes, each one more specific than the last. They appeared in unexpected places, pinned to the community bulletin board at the grocery store, slipped under windshield wipers, even tucked into the weekly church bulletins. Each message hinted at a darkness lurking beneath Maple Grove's peaceful surface. Sheriff Thompson's investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. The notes weren't random. They referenced details only a local would know. The mention of Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning roses that mysteriously died last August. The unexplained fire at the old Miller barn. The strange noises reported near the creek where teenagers used to party. As autumn crept closer, the messages became more frequent and more threatening. People started looking at their neighbors differently, wondering who among them was harboring such darkness. Trust began to erode like soil in a rainstorm, washing away years of comfortable certainty. The breaking point came when someone spray-painted a message across the front of Mary's Place. Every town has its secrets. Maple Grove has more than most. The red paint looked like blood in the early morning light, and for the first time in 20 years, Sarah didn't open the diner for breakfast. As the investigation reached its peak that cold October morning, Detective Williams gathered the town's key figures in the high school gymnasium. The same space that had hosted countless basketball games and graduation ceremonies was about to become the setting for Maple Grove's darkest revelation. What the detective shared next sent ripples of disbelief through the crowd. The evidence pointed directly to Robert Henderson, the beloved high school principal of 15 years, chair of the town council, and leader of the youth mentorship program. The man who had handed out diplomas to a generation of Maple Grove's children was behind every threatening note, every calculated message. The proof was irrefutable. Security footage from the church showed him placing notes in the bulletins. His home computer contained drafts of every message. But most damning of all was his own confession, written in the same precise handwriting that had terrorized the town for months. A heavy silence fell over the gymnasium as Detective Williams explained the motive. Robert had discovered financial improprieties in the town's records, systematic embezzlement spanning decades. Rather than expose it directly, he chose to create chaos, believing the pressure would force those responsible to reveal themselves. Instead, he had fractured the very community he claimed to protect. The impact was immediate and devastating. Parents who had trusted Robert with their children's futures now questioned every interaction. The mentorship program he led collapsed overnight. Students who had looked up to him as a role model struggled to reconcile the man they knew with the person who had deliberately terrorized their community. In the days that followed, people spoke in whispers about the signs they might have missed. His late nights at the school, the mysterious phone calls, his increasing withdrawal from social events. The threads of trust that had woven their community together for generations were now unraveling, leaving behind a tapestry of doubt and suspicion. In the months following Robert Henderson's arrest, Maple Grove became a different place entirely. Neighbors who once left their doors unlocked now installed security systems. The casual conversations at Miller's coffee shop, once filled with laughter and local gossip, grew cautious and guarded. People found themselves second-guessing even their oldest friendships. The ripple effects touched every corner of community life. Church attendance dropped sharply. The same pews where Robert had placed his threatening notes now sat empty each Sunday. The town council meetings, once a forum for passionate but respectful debate, devolved into tense confrontations as trust in local leadership eroded. Parents withdrew their children from after-school programs, fearing what other secrets might be lurking behind trusted faces. The school itself became a symbol of betrayal. Teachers who had worked alongside Robert for years struggled with guilt, wondering how they had missed the signs. The halls that once buzzed with teenage energy grew eerily quiet as students and staff alike grappled with their new reality. The framed photos of Robert that had lined the main office wall left visible rectangles of unfaded paint when they were taken down, constant reminders of the void his actions had created. The investigation into the financial improprieties Robert had discovered revealed even deeper wounds. 3 former town officials were indicted for embezzlement, but the revelation only intensified the community's paranoia. If trusted leaders could steal for decades without detection, what other deceptions might be hiding in plain sight? The annual town festival, traditionally organized by these same officials, was canceled that year. No one felt much like celebrating. Perhaps most painful was the impact on the students Robert had mentored. Young people who had shaped their future plans based on his guidance now questioned everything he had told them. College recommendation letters bearing his signature were withdrawn and rewritten. Dreams he had encouraged were abandoned, tainted by association. The graduating class that year chose to have their diplomas mailed rather than participate in a ceremony that would only remind them of his betrayal. In every crime that shakes a community, we often find ourselves asking, does time really heal all wounds? Can trust once shattered ever be fully restored? The story of Maple Grove challenges us to examine our own relationships, our own communities, and the delicate threads that hold our social fabric together. While Robert Henderson faces justice behind bars, the true resolution of this case may lie in how the community chooses to move forward. Some residents have started initiatives to rebuild trust, proving that even in darkness, hope finds a way to shine through. For an inspiring look at these community healing projects and similar cases of recovery, visit therealcrimediary.com. Speaking of trust and deception, our next episode delves into a case that will make you question everything you know about family loyalty. Join us as we uncover the story of identical twins, a $1 million inheritance, and a disappearance that left investigators seeing double. Until then, explore more true crime stories and join our growing community of crime enthusiasts at therealcrimediary.com, where every mystery leads to another. Hey listeners, welcome back to The Real Crime Diary. I'm your host, Sean Dupree. If you tuned in last time, we had a deep dive into the disturbing history of power abuse across different eras, looking at the connection between dominance, control, and how it plays out even today. We touched on scandals from the past and compared them with some modern-day examples, showing how these patterns of abuse, unfortunately, persist. One of the most insightful tools we've explored to understand this is my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's not just a historical account, but an interdisciplinary approach to understanding why this keeps happening. We draw from history, philosophy, and modern case studies to explain how figures like Dominique Pellico, Harvey Weinstein, and others have exploited their positions of power for their own gain, often protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Recap of last interaction. In our last live stream, we discussed how libertinism, philosophically introduced by figures like Marquis de Sade, has shaped the way power and pleasure have been entangled throughout history. This concept ties directly into how figures like Weinstein operated, as we saw parallels between de Sade's fictional characters and the way powerful men manipulated their victims in real life. You guys had some amazing comments, asking how societal structures have allowed these behaviors to go unchecked for so long. It's a crucial question, and one that the book addresses deeply. Why this book is valuable. Now, what's powerful about Power, Pleasure, and Pain is its ability to break down these historical patterns and link them to the present. You're not just reading about ancient Rome or Enlightenment philosophy, you're seeing how these ideologies are alive today. The book uncovers how sexual violence and control have been systematically woven into the fabric of societies from ancient times right up to the modern era. It's about understanding not just the individual predators, but the systems that protect them. Whether it's in royal courts, religious institutions, or today's corporate and entertainment worlds. Through these historical lenses, we also explore movements like #MeToo that are beginning to dismantle these structures. The fight for justice is far from over, but as the book demonstrates, we are in the midst of a cultural shift where legal reforms are finally addressing these long-standing issues. It's more than a history lesson. It's a guide to understanding and supporting change today. What's next? If you want to dive deeper, I suggest picking up Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's available now, and trust me, it will change the way you think about power, pleasure, and control. We've even got some exclusive content coming up on the channel where we'll be exploring the book's case studies in even more detail, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the Real Crime Diary so you don't miss any updates. Let's keep this conversation going, because understanding the past is key to changing the future.